So welcome to Live Kabbalah. Welcome to Tzfat. And we're in a time of the year right now, which is actually called, it has a Kabbalistic meaning to. Well, every day and every moment of our lives has a deeper meaning to it. But right now, the times that we're in are called the weeks of shovevim. The weeks of shovevim. And literally in Hebrew, modern Hebrew, the word for shovevim means somebody who is mischievous. That's literally what a shovav means. When you have a little child and they get into the chocolate cake, like my daughter did yesterday. My wife made a beautiful chocolate cake for our son's birthday, and my little daughter had a filling of it, and that's a shovav. It's a very cute thing. And when she was reprimanded by her older siblings, why did you ruin the beautiful cake that was meant for all of us? She just licked her fingers and licked her, everything that was in her mouth, and she enjoyed it even more. And it was the cutest thing. That's called a shovav, like somebody who is mischievous, and it's very, very cute. And the time right now is called the time of shovevim. Now, the thing about being mischievous is that it's cute for a certain amount of time. After a certain amount of time, you can't be putting your finger into the chocolate cake. You can't be getting into the same mischievous trouble you got into when you were 5 years old, and now you're 10. Or when you're 10, it's happening when you're 20. When you're 20, it's happening when you're 30, and so on and so forth, right? There's a certain amount of time that it's nice, it's cute, but then we have to move on. So the time right now is called the time of shovevim, where we're kind of like moving out of the state of immaturity. And there's a spiritual immaturity that we're working out. And the spiritual immaturity and emotional immaturity, right, is the time right now that we are in exile, right? So the weeks right now that we're reading, specifically this week, is called the week of Shemot. The parsha of the week is called the parsha Shemot, where we study, where we read about the Jewish people descending down to Egypt. And it starts off with Jacob, the patriarch of the nation of Israel. In fact, he is Israel, descends down with all of his children, right? And then the children pass away, the tribes pass away, and then the exile begins. So Egypt is the prototype for all of exiles. All the subsequent exiles that we ever had all began with Egypt as being the prototype. Why is Egypt called the prototype? Because Egypt means constriction. Meitzarim. Meitzar means a constriction. And a constriction could be understood on many, many different levels. There's the physical oppression, which when we read the verses, we understand that there was a physical oppression, which was horrible. It was a very, very difficult oppression that the children of Israel had to undergo. But then this oppression could be understood on many, many different layers. There's an oppression over here, which is specifically a spiritual oppression. And it's an oppression of the mind, the oppression of the consciousness. Because the ultimate negative aspect of being a slave is that a slave has no mind of their own. That's really what slavery is. Slavery is the lack of the ability to decide for oneself and to actually take oneself into consideration. There is no self. There's just what the master dictates. So Egypt personifies the essence of exile and the essence of a lack of freedom. So now let's talk a little bit about what is exile. According to Kabbalistic sources, exile means a lack of da'at, a lack of consciousness. Now, da'at is a very unique word in Hebrew, because da'at means to know, right? But what does knowing really mean? So da'at is explained that da'at is a fusion of what one knows intellectually and what one feels experientially. It's the connection between the two. It's a connection between mind and emotions. So my mind could tell me one thing, but my emotions take me the exact polar opposite. My emotions feel this, and my mind tells me, no, don't do that. It's a bad idea to do that. Do this. and we're living in a dichotomy. We're living in two opposite worlds. Mind and heart are in two different places. That is called exile. So when the Jewish people were in exile, the nation of Israel was in exile. The minds were telling them. The mind was telling them one thing. The heart was saying another thing, and they were not living in a state of fusion. The state of fusion is a state of consciousness where the mind and the heart could come together and be unified. That's what da'at is. So a loss of da'at means exile. So that means that a gain of da'at means redemption, right? And the whole difference, in fact, we're told that the difference between exile and redemption is only one letter. And what is that one letter? That one letter is the letter Aleph, because in Hebrew, the way we say exile is gola, and the way we say redemption is geula. So there's one Aleph that's missing. It's all it is one Aleph. So what is an Aleph really? An Aleph is just such a small. It's the first letter, but it's the letter that connotes consciousness. It's a letter that fuses the mind and the heart together. So I'd like to try to offer a number of tips, a number of ideas that will help us gain consciousness based on sources that we find in the Talmud, and based on sources which are found in the Zohar, etc. So, the name of the parsha once again is called Shemot, names. So, what are names, and why is specifically the book of Shemot associated with the descent into Egypt, right? And that means that there's also something in Shem in a name that has the ability to actually get us out of Egypt, because it says that the names went down into Egypt, and they specifically went down into Egypt with the purpose of raising us up, right, out of Egypt. So we start off. There's three levels of understanding this freedom and gaining consciousness. So the first level is shame. It's explained that the word Shema is the affirmation of the unity of God within the world, is affirmed with a verse, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Listen, O Israel, Hashem, who the name of God which connotes the above world. Elokeinu is our God, which connotes God who is within the world, and God is one. So if one would look at the word Shema inside of a Torah scroll, he would find something very interesting. That the word Shema itself actually is Shem, the Shin and the Mem, and then a large letter Ayin. There's a large Ayin. That means that it's actually broken down into two parts. Shem Ayin. It's the name of the letter Ayin. And then it continues, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, God is one. And then it ends off with a large letter Daled. So the verse itself stands out with two jumbo letters. The letters spell out, if we read it this way, from right to left, we get aid, which is a witness. If we read it from left to right, we get the words da, which is knowledge, which is da'at. So what is it about the Shema which gives us the ability to have da'at? So there's a story which is told about a certain follower, a certain chassid of the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Rebbe of Lubavitch, which was a very, very unique holy man. And this follower of his mentioned, he lived a very, very old age, and he mentioned to the Rebbe Maharsh's grandson, who was also the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the story of his grandfather. And this is what he said. He said, when I was a young man, I visited your grandfather, and he suggested, and he asked me what I did, and I said to him, I'm a businessman, and I travel from town to town. And he said to me, I want you to try to, whenever you travel, to try to get a seat near the window so you could see the sky. And whenever you go, let's say get a hotel room or whatnot, try to get a window in that room that overlooks the view of seeing the sky. Why? Because the acronym for Shema, the acronym of the Shema, is found in the book of Isaiah. Se'u marom einechem. Lift up your eyes and see. And the verse continues, Mi bara ele. Who created this? Meaning that the inner meaning of the Shema is to understand who created all of this. Where does everything come from? And the whole reason really that a person is in exile, that a person is feeling in a state of confusion, that a person is in a state of turmoil, is because they're not realizing what is the source of everything. We're kind of like losing track. We're going a little off track. When something upsets us, or we're in a state of consciousness which is not the most positive. Why is that? When we're anxious or whatnot, is because we're actually forgetting the source. We're actually forgetting that there's a source to everything. And the affirmation of remembering the source is the affirmation of the Shema, which is Shem Ayin, the name of Ayin, which is an aid. It spells out as a witness. Now, why is that a witness? So what is the definition of a witness? A witness is somebody that is able to report seeing something, right? And then that information could be inferred as, by either the judges or lawyers or whatnot, as the cause of such of so and so. That's what a witness is. And we're actually asked to actually just observe. And when we observe, we actually witness. What are we witnessing? We're witnessing something which is beyond our ability to even translate into understanding. And that is the witnessing effect over here. So the witness actually could cause himself or herself to gain da'at, right? By recognizing the source of themselves, their higher self, and B, the source of everything, why everything occurs, why everything happens, right? And that is because of God. So that's da'at. And when it says that the children of Israel descended down into Egypt, so the first way of looking at it is Elish Shemot b'nei Israel. That what does it mean that this is the names of the nation of Israel, that they went down, that they were able to draw down into the exile the name of Ayin, which is the Shema, right? And we know, and that's what the Rebbe Maharash told this follower of his to constantly remember that wherever you are, you have the ability to rise above yourself, above the restriction of your own animal soul, your own, your wanting or needing to feel sad, to feel depressed or whatnot. We could rise above that by recognizing the source, and that's da'at. Da'at is like is an infusion of consciousness within the moment, right? Which is which is a connection with infinity. So that's the first level of drawing consciousness into the exile, and that's kind of like the choice one. And the truth is, the Maimonides, the Rambam, speaks about this in his work. He says that when a person will look at nature and will contemplate the vastness of creation, then that will cause the person to actually reflect on the source of their existence, and thereby the reason for their existence, and that will raise the person out of wherever they are, and it will cause a person to actually love God, right? So the Maimonides speaks about that level, and Kabbalistic and Hasidic thought are constantly speak about this idea of dad, of infusing dad within us. And just a very basic tip that we could take from this is whenever we're in a difficult type of a predicament, before reacting to whatever the predicament is, right? It could be traffic, or it could be, more complex things, but life is never perfect. However perfect we want it to be, and we wish it would be, it's just not that way. And things are bound to come up. And when we infuse the Shema, right? When we infuse that time, right? Into our day, so then that's rising above that. So that's the first level. The second level is the Shema. Shemot refers to the names of God. Now, there's many names of God, and I just want to talk about this for a couple of minutes. That when we talk about the name of God, it generally is the four-letter name of God, which is the Yud, and then the letter Hey, and then the letter Vav, and then the letter Hey, which is the Tetragrammaton. So it's a Yud K Vav K. We're not even supposed to say it fully one after the other, but that represents the name of God, which represents all the Sfirot within it, represents the four worlds. And actually, by the visualizing the name of God, that is a meditation, a basic meditation, which the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law, actually speaks about right at the beginning. And he quotes King David, "Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tami," that I will have God's name in front of me at all times. And when one has God's name in front of their eyes, and thinks of God's name in front of their eyes, so then they're infusing their mundane moments with God's presence, which is there all the time, absolutely. But it's infusing God's presence within their consciousness, within our consciousness. So using the Elish Shemot, using the Shemot, using the names, and meditating upon. That's just one name. There's also the basic meditation. Not basic, but it's a very important Kabbalistic meditation of the Ana B'Choach, right? And looking at the Ana B'Choach was written by Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, who was 2 generations before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, before the Zohar was even written, and he writes one of the most important prayers, which is called the Ana B'Koach, and it's said a number of times during the day for in the prayers in the Jewish prayer book. And what the Ana B'Koach is an acronym of God's 42-letter name. Now, God's name is not just four letters, but it expands to become different permutations of letters. And one of the types of permutations, or one of the ways that God's name is expressed, is through 42 letters. And meditating upon those 42 letter names, and specifically it's divided into seven parts, right? There's six individual letters in that acronym times 7. So that means every day of the week corresponds to a certain 6-letter permutation, which the Kabbalists tell us that by actually bearing that in mind and actually meditating on that permutation on that specific day has within it a tremendous amount of spiritual energy. And if one could do the whole Ana B'Koach and actually visualize it in their minds, it has a tremendous amount of power within it. Now, besides that, there's permutations of God's name itself, the Yud K Vav K, which could become 45, the numerology of 45, depending if, and it could be 63, and it could be 72 letter name of God, right? Depending if we're adding an aleph, we're adding a hey, or adding a vav, right? And that expands, and that actually brings in, the names of God actually to a different level, and that's obviously a much more advanced level of being on and contemplating. But that is something which Kabbalah speaks about often. Very right, that having that meditate, taking the name of God in its certain permutations and thinking about and meditating upon it. And each permutation has a different power within it to unleash certain blockages and to draw down certain levels. And the great Kabbalists, the great tzaddikim, were able to do all types, very, very amazing things with their powers of holiness, right? This only works if a person is seeped in, in the right consciousness, in the right place, and they're connected, right, on the right levels. So those are the permutations of God. Now, the Ramban, who is called the Nachmanides, one of the most important commentaries on the Torah, and one of the most important Kabbalists, writes in his introduction to the Chumash, to the Torah, mentions that the entire Torah are permutations of God's name. Meaning, we could open up the Torah, and we're reading it. We're reading the Torah, and we could, and it makes sense. There's stories, and there's laws, etc. But that's only on that's on one level. But on a deeper level, the Ramban says that all of it is just code words. All of it is just codes. It's codes of God's name. And if a person would technically read the Torah all day, right, and they would just kind of like even go through it, so then they would be performing a mitzvah by going through it. Why, even if they're not understanding why? Because there's holiness within the words themselves, within the Hebrew words themselves, right? The English words, obviously, the understanding of it causes, gives us the mitzvah when we understand what's going on. But when we read the Hebrew, even if we don't understand what's going on, we're unleashing tremendous amount of potential. So those are names of names, and we have the ability to access those names and to access consciousness by going through those names. And that means that when we study, and when a person studies the Torah, they are instilling consciousness within their mind. And what that is, it's kind of like a boost, like a spiritual boost, for when they go into the exile, right? And it could be right after a class, right after somebody hears something really profound. Then they go into like, okay, now that happens, and now they have to like deal with that. But when a person is steeped in that consciousness, so then they're better able to contend with the obstacles that are thrown at them, because they're more they're supposed to be more godly in their mind frame, because they've accessed those godly names, which they've been reading and they've been seeping in and they're taking into their consciousness. So by learning, by one learning the Torah, that gives a person the ability, gives a person that boost, right? Immunity, right, to be able to rise out of the exile. Now it's interesting because it says that the tribe of Levi was not in the exile. What were they doing? The tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi is, right, one of the 12 tribes, but they weren't doing any of the work. They were just like, what were they doing? So the commentators explain that they were studying the Torah. They were studying the Torah. So that means the study of the Torah supersedes and it gives the person the ability to rise beyond the exile. They weren't subjugated to the exile. That's why the tribe of Moshe, which comes from Levi, wasn't involved. Aaron, his brother, wasn't involved. Miriam, right? They were all basically free, but free in order, not just free. They were free to access that source of godliness, which is the true freedom, which is the freedom, right? So that's the second level of drawing down da'at within ourselves. Now, just to summarize, the first level was the Shema, right? Accessing basically the realization of who created all of this and being present in the moment and accessing the fullness of the moment and bringing it within ourselves. The second level is the accessing the letters of the Torah, right? And that's what the Shemot is. It's the names of God. The third level is, now the Talmud gives the following advice to somebody who's been overtaken by exile, by mental slavery, by their own slavery. And the Talmud says, first thing you should do, and this is what this class has been based on, this actually portion of the Talmud. The Talmud first says a person should say the Shema. If the Yetzer Hara comes and tries to combat you, so say the Shema, and then you'll be saved. That's level 1. Level 2, if that doesn't work, it says, Bashcheu lebeit midrash, bring him into the house of study and study Torah. If that still doesn't work, doesn't do the job, and you're still in exile, and it's like, it's all nice, to do those things, but it's just not working. It's not practical enough. So then the Talmud says, third level is Zochreu Yom Hamita. So remember the day of death. And why is that? Because that's actually a bit morbid and it's a bit intense. And when a person, thinks about that, okay, that actually stirs a person out of the slumber of their own, mental slavery and of their own, smugness and, contentedness and whatnot, and better allow them to reach above their limitation. So, how does this relate to? How does this relate to shame? So it says by King Solomon, he writes in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes, he writes Tov Shem Tov Mishemen Tov, that having a good name is better than having good oil. Shem and Shemen are connected to each other because Shemen is oil, but it refers to like oil as being rich and having like power and whatnot. And King Solomon in his great wisdom says, it's what is better to leave as one's legacy, if not a good name. And in fact, it says that a good name rises above all other things. It rises above three crowns. There's the crown of being a king. There's the crown of the kahuna is being a priest. And then there's the crown of Torah, of having Torah. And then it says that the crown of a good name rises above all three of those levels. Why? Because a crown of a good name is something which is left behind. It's a legacy which is left behind. And ultimately, when a person thinks about life, they're thinking about, at the end of the day, what kind of legacy and what am I going to leave behind in this world after 120? And it's a mature, it's a serious, it's a thing to contemplate. And for the tzaddikim that spend their lives not just in this world, but spend their lives actually in contemplating the eternal, thought about it all. They thought about this actually all the time. And the Talmud says any day could be possibly the last day. And we're not supposed to think about sad things. We're supposed to be happy, but at the same time, there's room for that to awaken somebody out of their slumber and to just connect the dots, whereas other things don't connect the dots. So in other words, there's three ways of connecting the dots and getting to dot, right? The first way is just naturally connecting with the Shema and recognizing that everything is one, and there's a unity within existence, and seeing that within nature. The second level is accessing the holiness from the letters of the Torah. And then the third level is, if that doesn't work, then a person needs to be stirred by actually contemplating the day of death. Now, in God's will, God wants us to just connect, obviously, on which level? On the first level, and do that, out of joy. That doesn't work. So then the third level has to be utilized. And this brings us to, part of the exile of Egypt was this harshness that the people had to go through. And the harshness actually brought them, and it says that it was the first time that they cried out to God. And it says that God heard them. And that crying out to God, God heard their inner cry. They accessed that place of da'at. And it's not just in Egypt, but in all exiles that we have gone through and are in right now, that we sometimes have to look at and think about very intense things, and just almost disturbing things in the news, because we need to be awakened. So for some people it's naturally awakening, and for others it's actually through intensity, through this harshness, and by seeing that, by seeing all types of intense scenarios which brings a person to think about their own existence, then they become awakened out of that. So ultimately we have a choice, and I personally I go with the first two, and really we have the ability to live redemption. So we could live redemption even as we're in exile, even as the book of Shemot begins. We start talking about redemption, and redemption occurs right over there in the first word. Eile Shemot Bnei Israel. That right there in the first word is already the redemption. because when we're able to access the Shem, the name of Ein, the name of Ein, of God, then we're able to actually live that redemption even while we're in exile, even while everything unfolds. Now, every week of these weeks of shovevim, which is an acronym for the readings of the week, there's another level of coming out of redemption. So the first level of redemption is a level which is associated more with hearing, and hearing is kind of like a far removed sense, at least compared to sight, because seeing is actually connecting to the matter on a deeper level. The level of hearing is a level of inferring, and when one infers, there's something very, very powerful in that, and it's actually the beginning of one being able to see properly, because seeing could actually, although seeing in and of itself it could be a misleading sense, because somebody could see and they don't even know what they're seeing, and not even appreciating what they're seeing. Whereas if a person hears and then they see and they actually appreciate that, then that's the next level of redemption. So next week we're going to speak about next parsha is actually the parsha of Va'era, that God appeared, Va'era, that God appeared to Moshe to redeem the nation of Israel, and then the next parsha after that is Bo, which means to come, and that's our actually coming to the level of tactile redemption, and it progressively gets higher and higher. So during this time of shovevim, of being mischievous, we come out of our mischievous state of actually being used to being happy in our our exile state, whatever that may be. I mean, not that we're happy in it, but a person could be content in that exile state. And coming out of that exile state increasingly progresses throughout these weeks, where we actively work on infusing da'at, and through each and every week we add another dimension, another level of da'at, until finally we reach a redemption, a sense of redemption. And all of this is obviously meant to work for us on our personal levels, within our personal lives, and something that we need to access, and that we need to look at the parsha. We need to look at the readings, and in that way, in a way of actually drawing it to our personal lives. And the exile is not just an exile of people in a country thousands of years ago, etc., but it's an exile that we are currently in, and it's an exile that we have the ability to work out of, and come to a sense of redemption. And that redemption is actually the place of da'at, place of inner knowledge, of deeper consciousness, and of being within that consciousness at all time, right? And that's really like Mashiach times is really being in a state of consciousness always. So I want to bless us all that we should all access this state of consciousness, and we should work on that, and see the results, the positive results within our personal growth, and as well as the personal growth of everybody around us, and the entire world, where we're going to see consciousness just unleashing itself, and the flood of consciousness will come down to the world, where we will live in that place of a higher reality.
Thank you. So, can I ask some questions?
Sure. Yeah.